For millions of years, the age of dinosaurs has been presented as a closed chapter of Earth's history. They ruled the planet, science tells us, until a catastrophic asteroid impact ended their reign 65 million years ago, long before the first human ever appeared. This timeline is taught in every classroom, printed in every textbook, and defended by nearly every institution of modern science. But history is not always as simple as timelines on a wall. Across the world, hidden in ancient temples, carved into stone, painted on cave walls, and preserved in the myths of ancient civilizations, there are strange images. Creatures with long necks, massive tails, armored backs, horned faces, and reptilian giants that look remarkably similar to what we today call dinosaurs. How did ancient people describe creatures they were never supposed to have seen? Were these only symbols, imagination, coincidence? Or do they preserve fragments of forgotten encounters? In Cambodia, on the walls of Ta Prohm Temple, one carving appears to resemble a stegosaurus, complete with what many claim are the creature's famous back plates. In Peru, controversial stones known as the Ica stones show humans interacting with giant reptilian beasts. In North America, Native American legends speak of thunder lizards and giant reptile spirits. In Africa, stories of the mysterious Mokele-mbembe describe a massive long-necked creature said to dwell deep within the Congo swamps. Mainstream science rejects these claims, arguing that carvings are misinterpreted, legends are symbolic, and eyewitness accounts are unreliable. And often, they may be right. History is full of exaggeration, myth, and misunderstanding. But critics ask an uncomfortable question. Why are alternative interpretations dismissed so quickly? Who decides what evidence is acceptable and what must be ignored? Science depends on evidence, but evidence also depends on interpretation. A fossil in the ground can change history. A carving on a temple wall can be called art or testimony. The line between myth and memory is not always clear. This documentary is not about proving that humans rode dinosaurs. It is about asking whether the past is truly as settled as we think. Because sometimes the most dangerous question in history is not what happened, but what if we were wrong? Before we can examine the evidence, we need to understand what we are actually talking about when we say the word dinosaur. The term itself is surprisingly young. It was coined in 1842 by the British anatomist Richard Owen. He combined two ancient Greek words, dinos, meaning terrible or fearsome, and sauros, meaning lizard or reptile. Together, they formed the word dinosauria, the terrible lizard. But before Owen gave them that name, nobody called them dinosaurs because nobody had a category for them yet. What people had were bones, huge bones, massive teeth, giant vertebrae, strange footprints, and enormous skeletons emerging from the earth in England, Belgium, and the American West. To many people, these discoveries were mysterious. Some believed they were dragons. Others thought they were the bones of giants described in ancient legends and sacred texts. Only later did science organize these discoveries into the dinosaur story we know today. And that mainstream scientific story goes like this. Dinosaurs ruled the Earth for around 165 million years. They lived through three great periods: the Triassic, the Jurassic, and the Cretaceous. They evolved into countless forms: small hunters, giant plant eaters, armored beasts, and some of the largest land animals ever to exist. Then, around 65 million years ago, everything changed. A massive asteroid struck Earth. Combined with volcanic eruptions and climate collapse, It caused one of the greatest extinction events in history. Nearly 3/4 of all species disappeared. Among them were the non-avian dinosaurs. Only birds, scientists say, survived as their modern descendants. Humans, by contrast, came much later. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, appeared only around 300,000 years ago. Earlier human ancestors may go back 2 or 3 million years, but even that leaves a huge gap. Between the last dinosaur and the first human lies roughly 64 to 65 million years, an enormous empty space. According to this timeline, humans and dinosaurs never came close to sharing the Earth, not by thousands of years, not even by millions. For most scientists, this is settled fact. Case closed. But here is where the story becomes more interesting. Not everyone accepts this timeline. Not everyone agrees with the methods used to build it. And not everyone believes that fossils, bones, and reconstructed museum skeletons mean exactly what we are told they mean. Some question how fossils are dated. Others challenge geological assumptions. And some turn not to laboratories, but to history itself. Because across many civilizations, many of them completely unconnected, there are stories of enormous creatures that sound remarkably familiar. Great reptiles, horned beasts, long-necked monsters, winged serpents, dragon kings, thunder lizards. Creatures described not as fossils, but as living beings. Were these creatures imaginary? Were they symbolic? Were they exaggerated myths passed down through generations? Or were they memories? Fragments of real encounters preserved in legend? This is the question that drives part 2 of our investigation. Because long before science invented the word dinosaur, humanity may already have had another name for them. Long before the word dinosaur existed, people wrote about creatures that, by any description, should not have existed alongside them. Let us begin with the oldest and most widely read texts in human history. In the book of Job, one of the oldest texts in the Hebrew Scriptures, a creature is described called the behemoth. The text says, "It moves its tail like a cedar tree. Its bones are like tubes of bronze. Its limbs like bars of iron." No creature in the natural world today fits this description. Many theologians read it as symbolic or as a reference to a hippopotamus or elephant, but the description, particularly the cedar-like tail, simply does not match those animals. In the same texts, another creature appears, Leviathan. The account describes a being of terrifying power in the sea. It has enormous jaws, impenetrable hide, and the suggestion, at least in some translations, of fire and smoke from its nostrils. A creature, the text says, that has no equal on earth. Are these mythological embellishments? Quite possibly. But they appear in a text considered sacred and historically grounded by billions of people. The question is not whether these passages prove that dinosaurs existed. They do not. But whether they represent a cultural memory of something real. The Book of Revelation, a prophetic and deeply symbolic text, describes a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns. Again, scholars of theology read this as metaphor. But the imagery of a massive, scaled, multi-headed creature persists. And it persists not only in the Bible. The ancient Babylonian creation myth features serpentine, dragon-like beings. Chinese civilization, arguably the oldest continuous culture on Earth, has maintained an elaborate tradition of the dragon, not as a symbol borrowed from another culture, but as an independently developed, deeply specific creature with consistent physical features across thousands of years of art and literature. In the Chinese imperial tradition, dragons were not fairy tales. They were real enough to be harnessed to royal carriages. Their body parts, blood, fat, brain, were described in medical texts as having practical healing properties. This level of specificity is unusual for a purely invented creature. One ancient Hebrew tradition speaks of survivors of the Great Flood, a giant called Og, described as enormous and long-necked. Scholars have noted that Og's description, a massive, long-necked being, bears resemblance to a plesiosaur, the long-necked marine reptile of the Mesozoic era. Now, let us be careful here. These are mythological texts. They contain exaggeration, symbolism, and the fingerprints of storytelling cultures. No serious historian treats them as literal journalism. But there is a pattern worth noting. Across civilizations that had no contact with each other, separated by oceans, mountain ranges, centuries, an eerily consistent creature appears in the record. Large, reptilian, long-necked, powerful. Sometimes in the sea, sometimes on land, sometimes in the sky. That consistency demands a question. Is it coincidence? Is it something fundamental in the human imagination? Or is it memory, familiar? And then, a third creature, the Sirush. It has a scaled body, a long serpentine neck, bird-like rear feet, and cat-like front feet. It does not match any known living animal. Some historians say it is simply a mythological creature. Others note that its long neck and reptilian body resemble descriptions of sauropod dinosaurs. And if it was purely imaginary, why place it beside two real animals with equal artistic seriousness? Nearby in Mesopotamia, the ancient Uruk cylinder seals show two long-necked, heavy-bodied creatures standing beside a central human figure. Their proportions, the heavy body, the curved neck, the pillar-like legs, strongly resembled the classic sauropod body plan. These were not simple decorations. They were official tools used to seal important documents. The creatures placed on them were chosen deliberately. In Egypt, the famous Narmer palette also shows long-necked creatures unlike any ordinary Nile animals. Some call them stylized giraffes. Others argue the necks are far too long. And then there are the living accounts. Deep in the Congo Basin, one of the least explored ecosystems on Earth, local communities have for generations described a mysterious creature living in the waterways. They call it Mokele Mbembe, large, heavy-bodied, long-necked, semi-aquatic. When shown images of animals, including dinosaur reconstructions, many witnesses point to sauropods like Apatosaurus and Brachiosaurus. Several scientific expeditions have searched for proof. None returned with physical evidence. Skeptics say such a creature could not remain hidden in the modern world. Supporters answer that the Congo Basin is still vast, remote, and only partially explored, and new large species are still discovered even today. The absence of evidence, they argue, is not always evidence of absence. Its walls are covered in carvings, monkeys, parrots, deer, water buffalo, animals that belong in this part of the world, normal, expected, except for one column. At Ta Prohm in Cambodia, one carving stands apart from all the others, carved with the same precision and confidence as every familiar animal, is a creature that seems strangely out of place. Many paleontologists and researchers looking at photographs of this image have used one modern name, Stegosaurus. The plates along the back, the rounded body, the heavy four-legged stance, the proportions. To many eyes, the resemblance is striking and uncomfortable, because according to the accepted scientific timeline, the Stegosaurus had been extinct for around 150 million years before this 12th century temple was ever built. So, how did a medieval Khmer artist carve something so familiar? Skeptics offer several explanations. Perhaps it is only a stylized chameleon. Perhaps a rhinoceros interpreted through artistic convention. Or perhaps it is simply coincidence. Supporters of the alternative view argue that none of these explanations fully account for the detail, especially the distinctive plates along the back. We may never know what the artist intended, but the carving exists. Now let us travel from Cambodia to ancient Babylon. The Ishtar Gate, built under King Nebuchadnezzar II around 575 BCE, is one of the most magnificent monuments of the ancient world. Its walls are decorated with animals, the lion, the bull, both real, both for over a century. Dinosaurs have stood as symbols of Earth's distant past, creatures said to have vanished 66 million years before humans ever appeared. But scattered across the ancient world are artifacts, carvings, and stories that raise a disturbing question. What if some ancient people saw something they were never supposed to see? In Cambodia, at the Temple of Ta Prohm, built by the Khmer Empire in the 12th century, one carving appears to show a creature with plates running down its back, a shape many compare to a stegosaurus. Skeptics argue it may be a stylized animal or artistic coincidence. Others insist the resemblance is too precise to ignore. In ancient Babylon, the famous Ishtar Gate depicts lions, bulls, and another creature called the Sirush, long-necked, scaled, and unlike any known living animal. Nearby, ancient seals from Uruk show heavy-bodied creatures with long, curved necks resembling sauropod dinosaurs. Across the world, similar mysteries appear again and again. Ancient Greek artwork, Egyptian carvings, indigenous legends from the Americas, and deep within the forests of the Congo Basin, stories still persist of a massive long-necked creature known as Mokele Mbembe. No physical evidence has ever confirmed its existence, yet the stories refuse to disappear. But perhaps the most unsettling question is not whether dinosaurs survived longer than we believe, but whether science itself can ever be fully trusted. History has seen scientific fraud before. In 1912, the famous Piltdown Man fossil was celebrated as proof of human evolution, only to later be exposed as a carefully constructed hoax. Critics argue this proves scientific institutions are capable of major error. Supporters counter that modern paleontology rests on thousands of verified fossils discovered across the globe, making large-scale deception impossible. And then there is faith. Some religious scholars question why creatures that supposedly dominated Earth for over 165 million years receive little or no direct mention in sacred scripture. Others see no contradiction between faith and prehistoric life. The debate remains unresolved. What is certain is this: the ancient world left behind clues we still struggle to explain. And somewhere between myth, history, science, and belief, the truth may be far more complicated than we imagine. For the last 30 minutes, we have followed a trail through some of the oldest mysteries on Earth, from the ancient temples of Ta Prohm to the dense waterways of the Congo Basin, from the blue walls of the Ishtar Gate to the stone carvings of Uruk. We have examined ancient texts, forgotten legends, unexplained carvings, fossil discoveries, and living testimonies passed down across generations. But now we must ask the most important question of all: what have we actually established? The answer is both simple and deeply uncomfortable. The artifacts are real. The carvings exist. The stories exist. The accounts from indigenous cultures exist. The strange figures on ancient monuments are not internet inventions or modern fabrications. They are physically present in stone, preserved across centuries of human history. The Sirush of Babylon is real. The Ta-Prohm carving is real. The long-necked creatures on Mesopotamian seals are real. The descriptions of Behemoth and Leviathan in ancient scripture are real. What remains uncertain is interpretation. Do these images preserve distant memories of creatures human beings once encountered? Or are they examples of humanity doing what it has always done, combining imagination, symbolism, fear, and storytelling into creatures larger than life? This is where science enters the discussion. The scientific method was created precisely to separate appearance from reality. Radiometric dating, stratigraphy, genetics, comparative anatomy. These are not random guesses. They are systems built over centuries to test ideas against measurable evidence. And when those fields are combined together, they overwhelmingly support the mainstream conclusion. Non-avian dinosaurs disappeared approximately 66 million years before human beings appeared on Earth. That conclusion is supported by enormous amounts of fossil, geological, and biological evidence. It deserves to be taken seriously. But science is also a human process, and human history shows that even confident consensus can sometimes be wrong. There was a time when scientists dismissed meteorites as superstition because stones could not fall from the sky. There was a time when doctors rejected the idea that hand-washing could prevent disease. And in 1912, the famous Piltdown Man hoax was celebrated as proof of human evolution for more than 40 years before it was exposed as a carefully constructed fraud. These examples do not disprove modern science, but they remind us of something important. Science is strongest not when it refuses questions, but when it allows them. Consider another remarkable example, the coelacanth. For decades, this ancient fish was considered extinct, believed to have vanished alongside creatures from the distant prehistoric world. Then, in 1938, a living coelacanth was discovered off the coast of South Africa. A creature science believed gone for millions of years was suddenly alive in modern waters. The discovery shocked the scientific world, not because it proved every legend true, but because it demonstrated a permanent reality of human knowledge. The absence of evidence is not always evidence of absence. Now, this does not mean dinosaurs are secretly surviving in hidden jungles. There is no verified scientific evidence proving that humans and dinosaurs coexisted. No living dinosaur has been captured. No confirmed modern fossil has overturned the accepted geological timeline. But the anomalies remain difficult enough that they continue to provoke debate. The unexplained carvings remain. The ancient accounts remain. The testimonies from remote cultures remain. And perhaps the most reasonable position is neither blind belief nor blind dismissal. Because skepticism is not the enemy of science. True skepticism is the foundation of science. To question, to test, to investigate, to remain open to new evidence wherever it leads. Much of this planet remains unexplored. Deep oceans, dense rainforests, buried ruins beneath deserts and ice, and much of human history is still unread. Locked inside lost languages, destroyed libraries, and civilizations erased by time. Perhaps one day, new discoveries will confirm the mainstream timeline beyond all doubt. Or perhaps they will force parts of it to change. History has seen both outcomes before. Until then, the creatures of deep time remain suspended between science and myth. Part fossil, part memory, part mystery. And somewhere in the shadows between what humanity knows and what it only believes it knows, The past